And also today we will start by doing an introduction to the marine, to the oceanography. So in this course we will be learning about marine biology, marine chemistry, and physical oceanography. And today we will be starting to do the marine biology part. Okay, so we will do a very basic part, which will be the introduction to the basic concepts of life and ecology. So in this module, for this session, we need to understand what is life, what are the different constituents of an environment, what are the characteristics of living things. Okay, so we will try to cover all this in this module. So I'll try to make it very easy, very light for you to understand these basics. And if you already know these basics, so please be patient and bear with me. Thanks. So in an ocean perspective, we need to understand what are the different characteristics of life. What are the characteristics of living things? We need to identify between living and non-living things. We need to distinguish between these two. And we need to understand whether and how are the living and the non-living things connected, or are there any connections among the living and non-living things, and are these connections physical or chemical? So basically we try to look at life, and we are looking to it as an in an ocean perspective, as most of you will be working at sea, or working in a coastal environment at least. So there are different types of environmental components. In an environment we have different things. How can we distinguish between the non-living and living things? For that, we need to know what are the characteristics of living things. For example, if we observe nature, if we observe the ocean, we observe the sea, for example, we can see the organisms like fish can move. Okay, so the first characteristics of living things is movement, motility. Okay, so secondly, we know that the fish can feed. Then the second characteristics is going to be feeding. And in different contexts, even at sea, we know fish, crabs. At land, we know different animals, human beings feed. Okay? So feeding is a characteristic that we can use to see whether an organism is living or not. Okay, so another characteristic is respiration. Okay, uh, respiration is when organisms use the food that they ate. Okay, so we just saw that they feed. Okay, so the process of using the food that has been eaten. Okay, for example, food. One major food that we eat is starch, and the major component of the starch is glucose. Okay, so what is done using this glucose is in the cells. Okay, in the cells, it is broken down to release energy. Okay, so the respiration is typically the process whereby food is broken down to release energy. Okay, not to be confused with the French term of respiration, respiration. Okay, respiration est le procès où où on prend l'oxygène et on expire monoxyde ou l'oxyde de carbone. But here, respiration refers to the process whereby food is broken down to release energy. And here, carbon dioxide is produced, okay, and it is at the cells, at the cellular level. So when it goes out, that is breathing out, expiration, okay. So in biology, the term respiration refers to the part where glucose is broken down to release energy, and carbon dioxide as a byproduct. Okay, so now we know some organisms, most of the organisms can breathe. Okay, so breathing is a process whereby they breathe in oxygen and release carbon dioxide. So it is related a bit to respiration, but breathing is done for us to be able to respire. Okay, so under the absence of oxygen, uh, respiration will be quite impossible. Okay. So respiration and gaseous exchange is one characteristics, okay, one among the characteristics that can help us to identify whether something is living or non-living. Okay, and now we have another characteristics of organisms, that is excretion. Okay, excretion is the release or the removal of toxic wastes from the body. For example, we have carbon dioxide. For different animals, for example, human beings, we have urea that is removed through urine. We have other animals, such as we have some fish, we have birds that release urea or even uric acid or even ammonium salts. Okay? So this is a mode of excretion. Okay? Excretion is the release of toxic unused component from the body. Okay, now we can see, for example, this fish has laid eggs. Okay, and why it lays eggs is to reproduce. Okay, so reproduction, okay, whereby organisms produce new offsprings, okay, is a characteristics of living things. Okay, so different living organisms are able to reproduce, that is produce offsprings that can live and grow on to become similar adults. Okay. Now, another characteristics that we see here is growth. Okay, organisms are able to grow, okay, from one state to another state. Okay, so this is how we can see whether an organism is living or not. Okay, see, so if it grows, so this is a sign that it might be a living organism. Okay, so now see divers comes near the fish, and the fish just vanish away, go to hide behind the stones. Okay, so that's has been able to happen because of sensitivity. Okay, so what is sensitivity? It is the ability to sense the environment, okay, to detect changes that occur in the environment. And for that, they use different sense organs such as ears, eyes, skin. Okay, so we have different sense organs. Okay, so the living organisms are able to sense the environment, and it goes, for example, for human beings, for plants, for fish, for different animals, plants. Okay, they are able to feel, to sense the environment. So sensitivity happens in all living things. Okay, so this is another characteristics of living things. Sensitivity. Okay, so if you're having some difficulties to understand, to memorize this term, so you can also use alternately the ability to sense. Okay. So this is a summary of living things. So living things, these are the characteristics of living things. Living things can move, feed, undergo respiration, excrete, reproduce, grow, and sense. Can plants move, feed, undergo respiration, excrete, reproduce, grow, and sense? Okay. So if we can answer these questions, all these questions for plants, then, for example, if these plants can move, okay, at least if some plants are sessile, some of their parts can move. For example, in plants, uh, their gametes, their pollen grains, for example, can move. So one part of its cycle, a plant can move. So it can move, yes. So do they feed? They do not have mouth. They do not feed like animals, but they do undergo photosynthesis, whereby they produce their own food. Okay, so they feed themselves by producing their own food. Okay, they do undergo respiration. They do excrete. Okay, for example, they excrete oxygen. This is oxygen that we use to breathe. They do reproduce, they do grow, and they do sense the environment. Okay, so if we ask the same question for the rock, can rocks or sand move? No. Can they feed? No. Can they undergo respiration? No. Excrete? No. Reproduce? No. Grow? No. Sense? No. So they are not living organisms. Okay, so now we have another question for corals. Can corals move? At first look, we would say no, but surprised to know that corals are living organisms. Okay, that they have polyps and another organism known as zooxanthellae. So these are organisms that can move at certain stage of their life cycle. Okay, do they feed? Yes, they do feed. Okay, and for instance, the zooxanthellae, the origin part of the seaweed, of the corals undergo photosynthesis to produce their own food, and the coral use this food to survive. Okay, they do undergo respiration, they do excrete, and they do reproduce, they grow. Okay, corals grow every year, though slowly, but they do grow. And they do sense the environment. For example, they sense heat, they sense temperature very, very sensitively, and any change in temperature can be sensed and can harm them. Okay, and for example, this is the life cycle of a coral. Okay, it shows how a coral spawns, produce baby. Okay, we produce baby coral, and then it acquires the Symbiodinium, that is a zooxanthellae, the algae part, and then it settles down and then develops into a coral. Okay, so to be noted that the Symbiodinium, it is the zooxanthellae that gives the coral skull. So for this, in this context, we see that the non-living components of the rock, sand, light, water, minerals and gases, carbon dioxide and oxygen, etc. So we need to be able to recognize their presence. Even some can be seen, some cannot be seen. For example, the minerals cannot be seen. But we know that the sea or water, for example, contains trace minerals and even salts. But we need to do some procedures to be able to identify them. And now we know that these are the non-living components of the marine environment. Are they connected to living things? If yes, how? Okay, so they are connected physically through habitat, substrate, or shelter, or chemically through biogeochemical cycles like water cycle, carbon dioxide, carbon cycle, and nitrogen cycle, etc. So we have different types of cycle whereby different inorganic components, the non-living components can become a part of living components. For example, the carbon dioxide is an inorganic molecule, but it can become the part of living things by becoming an organic molecule such as glucose, okay, through photosynthesis. So this is how different components of the environment are linked to the living things. So this is where we stop. We stop. Okay. So hope you understood most of the contents of this lecture. So see you next time.